Thank you. So now that you're all awake, maybe I will have the privilege of putting you to sleep again. I hope not. Actually, yes, I come from a beautiful country, a beautiful town, Firenze, Florence, known for its art, for its architecture. But I don't know if you know that it also has been the place where banks were invented. And in a way, the first capitalist systems came out from right after the Middle Ages in Europe and the Renaissance period. So it's a place which bears a certain history, and it also has been a place of innovation for our vision of economy, which is quite different. The continent where Italy is based is quite diversified place. I mean, you have so many different cultures and languages and different economies. Until not many years ago, we had two blocks, the Soviet bloc and the Western bloc. And this makes it very difficult to network and have a common vision of what we intend by social and solidarity economy. And that's probably why it took several years to create a network and a European chapter of RIPESS. Now we have a certain history of the cooperative movement, of the mutualistic movement, of the public company and community banks, so not just the privately owned banks, many consumer groups and networks, the unions, some of the strongest unions were in Europe, no longer unfortunately today, and Europe is known for its welfare state and third sector. But things have changed. The European bureaucracy, the European Union, and especially the European Commission, which is sort of the government of the EU, has, in the last 20 to 30 years, become more and more neoliberal. And from Margaret Thatcher's time, Margaret Thatcher is the one who coined the phrase, "there is no alternative," to today, many of these policies have been implemented. So we have now a common currency, the euro, which has brought certain unity in the market, but not at the social and cultural level. We have a treaty that brings us together, but that was not decided by the people, and it was imposed from above. And we are passing from state economies to not a European economy, but a European central bank controlling everything. So we are in the middle of a situation in which we, the people, no longer have control of the economy. And rather it's the opposite. And in the years, I mean, since the fall of the Berlin Wall, that is the end of the communist regime, 1989, to the whole protests against the WTO, the World Trade Organization, and the various G8s, the greatest 8 governments, powers in the world. I remember because I was in Genova in 2001 when there was a huge protest that was crashed in violence. All of these movements have developed, and for many different things. And today, the latest movement, the Occupy and Indignados, are all saying that this system cannot go on, that we need real democracy. And real democracy is the only way to have also a real economy and get the economy back from the financial global system and the private banks to the people and the real enterprises. So we want to go from protest to building alternatives. We want to do it together with the resistance, but we want to show that these alternatives already exist. And they're not only alternatives on the side of the capitalist economy, they are transforming society, transforming communities. They are transforming people. Some of these are historical alternatives. Fair trade, it has been in Europe for many, many decades. Financial alternatives, ethical banks, community banks, local currencies have been developed. A lot of consumer groups now recognize themselves in a sort of movement of community support agriculture and solidarity consumer groups. There are transition towns, namely a UK movement, but developing all over Europe as well, and the degrowth movement. There's zero waste initiatives that many towns are starting to adopt. There's a movement to republicize what has been privatized, essential services. A huge campaign on water privatization, water management privatization has swept through Europe, and we had an incredible referendum that won in my country, in Italy. Only problem is that it has not been applied afterwards. And then we have renewable energies, organic farming, slow food, a lot of different and many different initiatives. But they are still very marginal. And now we have the crisis. The financial crisis has changed things on the table. Because before we could believe Thatcher's there's no alternative. But now there is alternative. Because it's so obvious, so evident, even to the common citizen, that the system is not working, that we can affirm in a much more powerful way that we're on the right road. The crisis has brought a lot of problems. The debt crunch, we were campaigning against the debt in the south of the world 20 years ago. Now we have it. State bankruptcies, the unemployment rate rose incredibly. Some countries are practically in default, like Greece, and poverty is increasing and is visible. So, at this point, all the alternatives are showing their vitality. Fair trade, organic farming, renewable energies, all of these are actually growing in counter tendencies to the rest of the economy. True, they're not exempt from the crisis, and it's slowing down, but they're much more vital. And there is also an initial recognition, as the one in Canada, but now in France it will be discussed in November, and in other countries or at regional level, many new framework laws are starting to recognize not a sector of the economy, but a different way of doing the economy, so allowing it in a legal way. The crisis made us realize next that we are all on the same ship. And it's showing also by the change that there is in the political inclination of people, but also in consumption. And people are much more aware of what they're consuming and are demanding a different kind of consumption. Go ahead. So let me give you a few numbers. Now this is from a report, because there's no report on social and solidarity economy, but there's a report on social economy in Europe. So we can get some of those numbers to have a picture, and then we will have to change them, of course, for our interpretation of solidarity economy, but it already gives an idea. About 10% in the countries who are more virtuous of the working population are involved in social enterprises. And that is about 50 million today in the Europe 25. And in the average is about 6.5%. Now this, compared to just a few years ago, has been growing a lot. We were much smaller percentages just 10 years ago. As I was saying, this does not include all those initiatives which are informal or mixed forms and that are not recorded by the official statistics. Self-production, co-construction, barter, etc. And also the multiplication of the groups, of the consumer groups, that from a few hundred just at the end of the 90s, today are thousands and thousands. And now we come to RIPESS Europe. After the fourth international meeting in Luxembourg in 2009, which was the equivalent of this meeting, a group of people came together and said, okay, it's time that we make a European chapter as well. And after 2 years, the founding Congress took place in Barcelona, and today, after the second Congress, which was just in July in Lille, France, we are 26 networks, territorial and thematic networks from 12 countries. First of all, the outreach to the rest of Europe, because it's very centered in the western part of Europe. We need to go east and we need to go south. And there are many initiatives, but they don't call themselves social solidarity economy. So we have to see what they're about and try to mutually understand each other. And that's what we want to do with an exercise called State of the Art in Europe. In the next years, we want to explore and map, but not just map, go in and get to know what exists. We are going to work on territories, on food sovereignty, on popular education. These are the main themes that RIPESS Europe has taken from the last Congress. Next. How do we do that? Well, some of the members are already doing it. For instance, with exchange and learning visits in the east and south of Europe with the Pacte Européen, or working through university and academy. There's a network called the US, which is bringing together various universities who are starting to work and research much more on solidarity economy. And then doing common projects together to co-fund this activity. And finally, linking with public authorities, with those network of public authorities that are starting to understand how important this is. I want to give you some examples of what exists. In the finance domain, we have what we call ethical banks, or ethical economy, finance. In my country, there's Banca Etica, which is a cooperative bank, which is built and owned by more than 35,000 people and organizations. There's La Nef in France, there's Fiare in Spain, which is being built, and there are other different examples in other countries. There's microfinance, which is developing a lot in Eastern Europe as well. There's insurances, there's many local currencies, and other forms, even using technologies like crowdsourcing and social lending, that are starting to direct themselves towards solidarity economy. There's the whole sector of production. Well, that's of course at the core. And here it's not just producing new things, but it's also recuperating, reusing, repairing what exists. And now enterprises are being made in shops to work on these. And against the programmed obsolescence that the capitalist economy promotes. There's fair trade transforming itself in not just long-distance fair trade, but also local fair trade and co-production. There's responsible tourism. And there are new things like the makers movement, producing things on your own. And many fairs, the multiplication of fairs that show the vitality of the movement is incredible. There's all the network of consumers and producers. I won't go through in detail here, but in many, many countries, the AMAP kind of initiative, the CSAs, the Community Supported Agriculture groups are growing and growing, multiplying actually. Because what we intend by solidarity economy is something that intense growth in a very different way. Growth is not becoming bigger. Growth is being able to multiply and network or work together. There's some very interesting movements also in Greece, for instance, where a movement called the potato movement has emerged. As I said at the beginning, the cooperative movement has a very long history. But it also, throughout the history, became bigger and bigger and corrupt, and it corrupted itself on the way. And it looks like more and more the traditional market-oriented business. So now there's a movement of going back to the roots of cooperatives, and also workers getting control of failed factories and trying to put them back together, as happened in Argentina. There's co-working initiatives where young entrepreneurs get together and share spaces and resources. There's land collectives, also against organized crime, etc. But that is not limited to production. You go ahead, one more. Since the welfare state is no longer what it was, we have big problems with assisting people in their basic rights. And this is also a domain where social and solidarity economy is finding solutions. In Greece, there are social clinics and pharmacies. There's a lot of co-housing and housing co-ops that co-construct their own public housing, micro childcare clubs, etc., etc. Finally, there is the urgent need to re-democratize democracy. Our system, our representative system, doesn't work anymore. It's been co-opted by the financial system. So we need to reoccupy it, in a sense, republicize it, resist against all those huge public works that are destroying our environment and communities, and start things like participatory budgeting, networks of municipalities working on social solidarity economy, etc. So we're doing also some lobbying work, although it's not very easy. And last thing, Daniel cited this at the beginning as part of building the movement, since we're so different, diverse, which is a richness, but we don't recognize each other. We are going to continue to work on the mapping and state-of-the-art initiatives, but also on popular education, peer-to-peer learning, etc. And I'm trying to enrich those initiatives like the resource centers of socio-eco and others that bring together the wealth of practices, initiatives, information that is produced every day at the local level, but that we don't share enough at the international level. Thank you.